Right, for those that didn't hear, good morning everybody. I've had a lesson on how to use the microphone, so hopefully everybody can hear us. The Chief Exec is in the building and will join us, but in the meantime, Nigel has kindly stepped up as Deputy Chief Executive to join us this morning. I've got apologies, obviously, from the leader, otherwise I wouldn't be sat here. And we've got apologies from Councillor Mandy Owen and Fiona Cross. So any declarations of interest from anybody present? No? Okay. Confirmation of the Cabinet minutes held on the 12th of September 2023. Members happy to approve those? Yep, thank you. And then any updates on actions? I don't think there are. No? No. Okay, if we go into the substantive item of today's Cabinet, the award of contract for the provision of the Torfaen accommodation and assessment hub, and I'm going to go over to Dave Daniels first.
Thanks, Chair. It's a fairly straightforward report in some senses. You know, this is the awarding of a contract for the service that will deliver out of Pearl House for the 24-hour supported provision. But I think it's worth elaborating on the project itself and the wider context in housing, because I think you know, it's a good news story in amidst a real worsening housing crisis, quite frankly. I think this is an exciting project because it's a more sustainable and more effective way of delivering good outcomes for some potentially very complex individuals, rather than, not that that's what we do, but rather than leaving them to their own devices. They do receive support, but they will receive 24-hour supported help from this premises, which will mean that they are more likely to get back on their feet and to be moved to a position of sustainable tenancy when they move on from this property. It delivers 15 units to Pearl House, which nearly doubles our supported accommodation provision in the borough, which is the direction of travel that we really need to be going in. Yeah, it's where we should be really with homelessness and supported housing, because the wider housing and homelessness situation only seems to be worsening in Torfaen and Wales in general, and the complexity of the individuals that we're seeing seem to be worsening as well. And so those rough sleepers that you see on the street at the moment, from my view, they're people that have been failed at various different points in their life. This is an attempt to catch them before they become entrenched in the homelessness and then eventually in rough sleeping. So I'm very excited about this project. It's what we should be doing, and hopefully we'll, if we're in a position to be moving towards in the future. I don't know, Simon, if you want to elaborate more on the project.
Yeah, I can do. I think in terms of... Ooh. It's not just you, Councillor, no, it's myself as well. In terms of the project itself, it's been long in the making. It's been a long time that we've taken to get this off the ground. A lot of complexities in terms of the development and putting this together. There's a lot of work that we've done that's in addition to the project that wraps around this. And I think what I'd say in terms of what we've done so far is we've redesignated Hales House from being a specific young person scheme to being a generic scheme for anybody who's requiring longer-term supported accommodation in the county borough. A real gap that we've had in Torfaen, and to supplement that loss of that being dedicated for young people, we've commissioned a further service up in Llanfairpwll of an 8-bed supported housing project specifically for young people. That itself has been running for over a year now and has proved really successful in terms of the outcomes. It forms part of our strategic direction in terms of young people services and tackling youth homelessness in the borough as well. So it encapsulates a number of different elements there. We've revised the home seeker policy and adopted a move-on approach that's been really successful in that in terms of those individuals who have been assisted to be moved on over the last 18 to 20 months, we've only had one tenancy fail out of approximately around about 170 tenancies there. And that's quite a significant turnaround when you look at the tenancy failure rate of individuals who are housed directly through the Home Seeker scheme, where choice takes hold. Individuals have choice over where they go. So that's a distinct improvement in terms of the outcomes for individuals. And it's stopping that revolving door of homelessness. We've procured additional temporary accommodation units that are more bespoke to needs that are there. And I would say, and I would point out that as at today, we have nobody in hotels in our accommodation. We have people in shared accommodation units, HMOs, with shared facilities, access to bathrooms, kitchens. They have support on site from the managing agents who look after that, support from our floating support services. But again, we have nobody in a hotel as at today, and that's been a typical occurrence over the last 4 to 5 months. We do use hotels, but very short term, 1 or 2 nights, emergencies only, and where we have no other choice. So we built up a portfolio that allows us to manage homelessness a little bit better. Circa around about 100 individuals accommodated at any given time. Real pressure points around single homelessness, so we're hoping this scheme itself will alleviate some of those pressures. And the prevention procedures that we have and the prevention fund process that we've put in place in terms of how we spend Welsh Government funding that we've been allocated has been revised, refreshed, and put some innovative methods in there in terms of how we prevent people becoming homeless, but also how we engage with people. How can we get individuals to engage with us more through using funds creatively? So some of the rough sleepers who are out there, who are entrenched and difficult to engage with, what can we do to actually get them to engage with us? Does it mean us buying them a pair of shoes because their shoes are worn? Does it mean buying a mobile phone for them so we can keep in touch with them? Little different things that help to get that engagement going with individuals so we can find the right outcome. And we've revised some of our drop-in processes. So around where we've got the Woolwich service that's just over the road, where Pearl House will be located, we've already started to devise and revise the drop-in process that will fit with the accommodation and assessment hub model. So we've done a lot of work in preparation for Pearl House being launched. There's a lot of work still to go in terms of the processes, procedures and things that are there, but the model itself is being built on 3 strands. Very much an early intervention activity, so that when somebody comes into services through our drop-in, that they're directed to the right service at the right time to potentially prevent a serious issue arising. So if somebody's got minor debt in, say, a Broughton Avon tenancy, how do we get them into debt services quickly so that that debt doesn't spiral to a point where they could be losing that tenancy and then going into our statutory processes? So the idea is to upstream a lot of work, and we've been doing a lot of that already, and our statistics bear that out in terms of our homeless presentations, which, bucking the trend of the rest of Wales, are levelling off and actually sort of stabilising. And that's because we're having great success in our upstream work through our housing support grant programme, through our community activities that are out there, and our interventions that we're putting in place through the different mechanics that are there. So all this is building up to that crescendo of Pearl House being launched. The idea very much then is that if early intervention doesn't work and somebody needs a preventative activity quickly, that it funnels in through that drop-in service into the accommodation and support hub that we're looking to commission here through this report. And that will give us the ability then to respond quickly, collaboratively, because this will involve then signing up a range of agencies to working with us in a more streamlined way, using the technology that we've got, how we're streaming today, to keep in touch with individuals. And what I call it, and you'll have heard the term quite often from different sources, instead of what I call a hard handoff, where we perhaps pop along in 2 weeks' time and see John at Citizens Advice, we want to plug into Citizens Advice there and then. So we've got that connection straight away. It might not be that Citizens Advice are in the accommodation and support hub, but they'll be there in a virtual presence so that we could hook in via Teams or what other platform we can use, so that individuals can actually have that issue addressed there and then and start that work so that we've got what I call more a soft handoff. And that's the concept of the hub working, in that what that does, it creates, if you like, a little bit of a conveyor belt, and it's very crude me saying that, but it's very much early intervention. If that doesn't work, what can we do to prevent? If that doesn't work, and we've got a single person with us who needs accommodation and needs the support of Pearl House, we would accommodate them in Pearl House until we're able to determine what the best pathway is for that individual, taking into account their choices as well. It's important we listen to them. If they don't want to go into certain accommodation that we're offering, we have to look at what we can do to broker something that's going to be sustainable and how we wrap services around them. So we're building those services around Pearl House. The best way I can describe Pearl in its operation is very crudely. If you have somebody who two individuals come in and we've got one space at Pearl House, if we've got somebody there who is working full time, doesn't really need support, is quite self-sustainable, we would not use a vacancy for them there. We would look to be using accommodation within our temporary accommodation portfolio and accommodate them in something where individuals are able to manage independently. They don't need the support that Pearl House would offer. And the pathway is fairly clear. It's from temporary accommodation into permanent housing. The pathway then for individuals who would need support would be going into Pearl House. A very in-depth assessment of accommodation and support needs done there to determine the best pathway for them to go on longer term. It's very much a structured way of working, one that is our way of delivering a rapid rehousing model in an environment where there is very little housing. So what we're trying to do is move, if you like, very much the deck chairs we've got on the ship around to best fit, and how we use the tools that we've got to actually manage the accommodation portfolios that we've had at a number of different levels. And that in itself, as we're looking to build more accommodation, we know the pressures that are there around land supply, funding and other pressures on different sectors. As we're looking to build and that expands, we've got things in place that we can actually use as an interim and at least keep people safe. What I would say is that the success so far is very much that we're able to quite openly say that we've, as I said earlier, we've nobody in hotels. Our temporary accommodation numbers are, per head of population, relatively low when you look at the rest of Wales. And if you look at the very height of homelessness in some boroughs, at the moment, Cardiff are reporting something like 240 families, not single people, families in hotels. We have no families in hotels, and we haven't put a family in a hotel for months. And that's not short term. So in terms of how we're managing things, this can only enhance and improve what we've developed, and it's a testament to the staff, because they've run the services, they've evolved the services, they've shaped the services from the ground up and from the strategic direction down as well. So we've met in the middle and we've created what we have today. So this is very much groundbreaking, innovative, different. It's going to be challenging, but the contract award is an opportunity for us to work with a provider now to start to set the project up on a firm footing before the formal launch, when the property is handed over from Mellin to the provider under a management agreement in around about July next year. Thank you.
Put the microphone on. It's a very comprehensive report. It is, Dave said, celebrating. And I thought, celebrating homelessness, but celebrating what we're doing in that. And it's very reassuring to hear you across the piece, not just this issue, all of those strands of work that come together that mean we don't have people in hotels and hostels, and that people are getting the appropriate support. And as you said, most importantly, listening to their needs. It's all very well that us and partners saying, this is what's good for you. Well, if it isn't, they're just going to drift elsewhere. So that collaborative approach, and sometimes the individual is forgotten in public service. We all do it for the individual, but we don't do it with them. We tend to do it to them. So I applaud that. Any other members? Peter?
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. It sounds like an excellent project. I just wondered, with these individuals that actually go into Pearl House, how long would you expect them to be in there? I mean, how long's a piece of string, perhaps, but...
the concept is very much that the maximum stay we're looking at is 6 months. What we're trying to build is accommodation that wraps around Pearl House, and that is very much what I would very crudely call a reception centre, where if somebody with support needs who's homeless presents to us, we'd look to accommodate them at Pearl House whilst we identify what the best fit is in terms of what the options we have available. So it may be that we've got a young person who presents who needs some support in terms of developing their life skills. So we'd look to move to one of the bespoke young persons projects. So a referral would be made through the gateway systems that we've put in and have been long-standing and proven successful to get that individual moved on to alternative supported provision. So the idea is very much that it will be quick turnaround. It's something we're going to keep a close eye on. So the last thing we want is this service to become very silted up. We want the throughput here. We want to be able to move people through. Hence why we're looking to procure more supported accommodation. We're looking at around about 8 further units this year of semi-supported accommodation to be added to the portfolio, and potentially more then as well, plus our temporary and interim and what I call our step-up, step-down provision that we'll put in place. It's very much how we strategically use some of our RSL partner stock to tackle some of the move-on arrangements that we've got. But the backbone of what we're trying to do is to keep this accommodation very short-term. I'm hopeful that an average stay will be less than around about 6 weeks. But again, that may well vary depending on circumstances, demand and supply.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, picking up on Simon there, I mean, yeah, the outcome is very much to at the end of their journey, for the individual to have been in Pearl House to be in a more sustainable footing in life and in their tenancy and move on. But as Simon alluded to right at the end, there is that it's very much demand based, and that touches on the conversation around B&Bs and hotels. We have regular briefings, and I will always ask, or if I don't ask, Simon will always tell me how many we have in B&B and hotels. And we will always say, look, we'll celebrate the fact that we've got nobody in there, but that could change the next week. It's very demand-based. We're very much based around the wider housing situation, which, is so volatile at the moment. In relative terms, we seem to be doing fairly well here in Torfaen at managing our demand, and that is perhaps not a reflection on our team, I think, because our team work very, very hard for that situation to be the case. It's incredibly stressful in housing for a housing officer right now. But yeah, I think it's important to say that it's very demand based. It's also, as Simon's alluded to, that it's tailored to the individual. Rather than standardised, I think it's tailored to get those individuals to a position where they are on a better footing, because chances are they've come into a Pearl House crisis. They will leave, and that is the goal and the outcome, that they won't be in crisis when they leave. They will be in a better footing, better able to manage their life situation. Yeah.
True use of the word celebrate then, if that's the outcome. I applaud it. So.
Yeah, just to repeat what colleagues are saying, this is a really important development. I think it goes right to the heart of our agenda of getting in with prevention and preventing pressures on the system, preventing further distress to the individuals, but also alleviating some of the pressures on resource that come in. So this is clearly quite a resource-intensive support, and it's reassuring to know that you anticipate it being relatively short-lived stay. I think it's important at a time when we know that grant funding is under huge pressure. Welsh Government grant funding is by no means guaranteed, that we've got really good monitoring data about the success of this approach in terms of diverting those single individuals with complex needs away from further services, not just housing services. So I'd put in a plea, I suppose, for really detailed and wider monitoring of the outcomes of this project to be built in right from the start, because it may well help us to defend it as a value for money proposition going forward. But on all other counts, value for money aside, I think it's an excellent project.
Sorry, I was kind of there was only one provider come forward for this. Would we be bold enough that if that one provider, and clearly they are, so that doesn't manifest itself in this, but if that one provider wasn't suitable and meet all our criteria, we would have gone back out to the market. So we can be assured that this one provider, I hate the expression ticks the boxes, but provides all our criteria and we're satisfied they're the appropriate person.
They are indeed. It's gone through a very rigorous process. We've got a very structured process in terms of commissioning, and we have done in the past where we've not had sufficient interest and the right provider there, that we're comfortable with that provider. We have gone back out to advert. We've got every confidence that this can work with the infrastructure we'll put around. It will need a lot of partnership working, I have to stress that, and that's not just ourselves being involved. This is touching on other statutory partners, other third sector agencies who we commission with. So there will be a need to have a very robust management board wrapped around this. But one thing I think we've been very clear on is that this is a partnership approach, a partnership structure, and it is not Torvine led, that it is led by the third sector organisation who've been commissioned, because we feel that's the way we can get the better engagement and the better outcomes for individuals. But please be assured that if we didn't feel that the organisation had the relevant competence, the relevant infrastructure and the relevant skill set, we would not be commissioning them.
I wasn't doubting it. It was just, as there's only one applicant, some people who are not familiar with these circumstances would say, well, you would appoint, wouldn't you? I don't know if it's something about being in this seat today, but I'm going to ask another question, and it's slightly off topic, but links to what Dave said about demand. We're approaching winter. You wouldn't believe it with the weather we've had the last 3 days, but we are approaching, and that does tend to be a real pinch point. With strands that you've already mentioned, are we in the best position that we've been for years to deal with winter demands? Is there a winter plan, or are we relying on what you've already mentioned to us?
I think in terms of how we're structured, we're in as good a position as I could expect and hope for. In terms of our provision that we have, it's sufficient to cater for the demand we're seeing. We've been able to divert a number of units of accommodation that we've had in our portfolio to meet other agendas around our response to the Ukraine crisis. So we've been able to provide accommodation through for individuals who are looking to resettle there. We're constantly reviewing and revising and refreshing what we provide, and we're constantly monitoring our demand and our trends that we're seeing. What I would say is that in terms of what's likely to come in the winter, yes, we will respond as well as we can, as we always have done. Are we in a better position than we were this time last year? I would say we are. We have a few more units of accommodation. We have a few more things coming forward that give me cause for optimism in terms of being able to meet need. The number of individuals who we do have out sleeping rough at the moment are exceptionally difficult to engage with. And whilst we're trying our best to get them into accommodation, it is proving very problematic. Other individuals who present to us who are at risk of rough sleeping or who are rough sleeping, who want to come into accommodation, we get them into accommodation. So we're able to meet that demand. We don't leave anybody out who doesn't wish to engage and come into accommodation with us. We've got sufficient connection with a number of private sector landlords alongside our RSL partners. That means we should have a sufficient flow of accommodation. Having said that, homelessness does have some very peculiar cycles. We tend to have the peak of demand round about now through to November, early December. Things drop off for around about six weeks or so, and then demand starts to rise as people's finances start to get hit a little bit in late January when the bills arrive. And then our demand picks up again. And it is very cyclical. If you look over the years of homelessness, wherever I've worked, homeless demand is very much a roller coaster. And we're equipped for that, and we can see that. And we do monitor on a daily and also weekly basis and the trends that we've got coming in. So we're well attuned and accustomed to managing those demand issues. So I'm fairly confident.
Yeah, from my perspective, I've requested a multi-agency meeting with housing officers and Gwent Police and other agencies as well to monitor the rough sleepers that we've got in the borough, because we know that come the colder weather, we do get a spike in the number of public queries that we get coming in as members and officers, which I find personally heartening, because it goes to show that people do care and do understand the situation. We're also typically engaged more with comms around this time of year as well, because comms is absolutely essential towards communicating what we're doing as a council towards assisting people. And yeah, I think we typically ramp up our briefings in the run-up to winter as well, so that we're monitoring the situation and that we can have pretty dynamic conversations about any emerging situations, because yes, winter tends to be a peak time, for me, in my position, because I typically get a lot of messages, phone calls, Facebook messages from people concerned about individuals. So it's information sharing and communications is absolutely essential this time of year. But it's compared to the past few years, I think it's good that, I'm touching wood, as Simon and you were saying, are we in the best position? In some senses, we're a hell of a lot better than we have been over the past few years, because the pandemic was incredibly difficult. But we're going into this winter hopefully in a more resilient position. And to bring it back to this item that we're discussing today, the introduction of the Pearl House provision will hopefully mean that we'll be more resilient even further then for future winters and all year round.
Just one point around some of the semi-supported accommodation that we've established to give members some reassurance and some idea in terms of why I'm fairly confident that we've got the right balance, is that in terms of some of the units that we have got the ability to bring in pop-up beds. So in extreme weather conditions or where the need arises, we can get somebody into one of those units of accommodation. So we have got pop-up beds in some of our schemes that we can almost get hold for literally 48, 72 hours. So if you're faced with a situation on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock where we've got somebody who comes in who would be sleeping rough, and we literally have no other options, if we didn't wish to go at the B&B route, we do have the ability to look at that pop-up provision as a short-term fix whilst the weekend sees itself out, and we can look at things at cold light of day on Monday morning. So we have built some resilience into some of our service provision. So we've not just thought we're going to stack, pack and rack people into the accommodation. We've thought about it. We've put some interim provision in short term, because otherwise it brings a whole raft of complexities around compliance there. But from our perspective, it's the right model to go down. Welsh Government have indicated that things such as night shelters are not supported and are not to be used. I get that with the pandemic and the issues that brought with it. So we've had to go down this model, which is a more sustainable, more effective model, and it's the right thing to do as well, because we've got that ability to be able to be flexible.
I think that's the point, it's the right thing to do. David reminds us that we're looking at a specific issue here today, but I'm grateful for the reassurances that we've had on the wider subject. I think it's been a very rich conversation, and as well as thanking you for the report, I would like you to take that back to the team. I know you're a small team, but from what you've evidenced today, there's some fantastic work going on supporting our communities, and please thank them and pass on the Cabinet's best wishes to them for their endeavours. Going back to the single item, the recommendation is at 8.1 of the report, and it's recommended that the contract for the provision of the accommodation and assessment hub is awarded to provider one following the outcome of the tender process. Are members happy to agree with that? Unanimous. Thank you all very much. And I declare Cabinet to close. Thank you all.